This is Bringing the Darkness to the Light with Catherine Nadal, professional psychic medium.
Today's guest is Sean Manning. He is the guitarist for the band The Exiles. The Exiles is an international 1970s-inspired hard rock band that also features his friend and musical partner, Paul Rafferty. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Hey, Catherine. Thanks for your time. I appreciate being here.
Thank you. Yeah, the band is called The Exiles, and I'm very interested in speaking with you. I was reading a lot about the band. I know that it's got a bit of a Led Zeppelin flavor. It's got a bit of Bad Company flavor. There's a lot happening right now with your band, but I want to start out to the beginning. How did you get involved in the music scene?
Yeah, I was a professional musician in England when I was about 17. And I came to the United States at the end of the 80s. I actually came over to study jazz, but ended up playing in various projects, heavy metal, hard rock projects out here. One with Kevin DuBrow when he was reforming Quiet Riot, with the band Hurricane as well, and did some session work. And I ended up being introduced to Paul through a chap by the name of John Sutherland, who is very well known in the Hollywood music industry. He has a great talent for putting people together. And John was a big fan of Zeppelin and a big fan of Free, and he liked the style of my guitar playing. And he put me in touch with this chap by the name of Paul Rafferty. Paul came over with Jason Bonham's original band, Bonham. And so we got together, we jammed on some old Jeff Beck and Faces songs, and we kind of clicked. And that was, I knew that we had something there. So that was the beginning of it.
That's incredible because, you look at our timeline and you say, sometimes you meet people by chance and then you really don't follow along with them. But you've been with him a long time, huh?
Yeah. So Paul and I, the reality is this album is remastered. The Turning Time album is remastered and reproduced from some demos that were initially released in the 90s. But there was no distribution, there was no record company, there was just some CDs pressed. And the timing was really bad because when Paul and I were writing together, it was right before grunge really hit and overtook everything. So the entire musical industry changed. But I got a phone call from a friend, Swiss Chris in Switzerland last year, who said there was the record company in Europe that wanted to put the album out. So I had an opportunity to go back into the studio, re-record and reproduce and remaster all of the tracks. And through that process, I ended up finding 5 songs that Paul and I had written 20 years ago that I completely forgotten about. So that was an incredible opportunity to go back and rearrange those songs with the scratch tracks that we had, add different instrumentation, to add some other guitar tracks to the original. I brought in Jeff Jacobs from Foreigner and Billy Joel to put keyboards on everything, and we remastered everything. So yeah, it's been an incredible journey this last year.
I find that interesting when you go back and revisit something that you worked on in the past. And as a songwriter, you probably write with emotion. Did you need to really dramatically change a lot of the sentimentality of those songs, or do you really feel it was more of changing instrument sounds and stuff?
Well, the original masters, the songs and the vibe of them was captured at the time. We recorded them in Sunset Sound in Los Angeles, in Hollywood, which is the same place that the Stones recorded and Zeppelin recorded. So the original tracks and everything and the vibes were there, but the production wasn't. And frankly, my ear back then wasn't as advanced as it is now. And I couldn't hear things back then for the songs that I can hear now. So it was actually a blessing to be able to have the original songs and make the album that I would love to have made 20 years ago, but didn't have the opportunity. So it was a great opportunity to close the chapter on that and actually produce those songs and record those songs, add other tracks, add other instrumentation and strings and so on, to actually have a final product which sounds exactly as I heard it in here. And it wasn't there 20 plus years ago. So I was grateful of that opportunity.
That's so great. I know earlier you mentioned the time of the 1980s going into the 90s and how the music scene kind of shifted towards grunge. That did, affect a lot of bands. What did you find in your life, not just in your music life, but in your personal life? Did you have to kind of sort it all out and say, I have to do different work, or did you somehow remain in the music field?
No, I knew before it came what was going to happen because the writing was on the wall when Lars Ulrich correctly was, making a lot of noise about Napster. It was basically theft. So when we were kids, if one of your friends bought an album, right, vinyl album, you'd copy it on a cassette, but it could only go as far as you could travel on your bicycle and how far your legs could carry you, right? So there might be 5 or 6 kids. You'd all get different albums, and there'll be 5 or 6 kids that all get different albums, and because you're a kid, you don't have any money, and then you share all of those. Well, I remember Steve Jobs being on the front page of Rolling Stone with an iPod. And I remember knowing at that point in time that this is over because one click and it's global. And all the revenue from record sales was going to disappear. And I saw that a year or two before it was going to happen. I was like, yeah, this isn't going to work for me. I'm out of here. So, yeah.
So, what did you do with your life?
I went actually, completely reinvented myself and I got into the financial markets and the real estate. I ended up working and owning a company here in Texas that helps individuals who want to educate themselves in the financial markets. Prior to doing that, I raised money for movies and Hollywood Reg D 504 stock offerings. I raised money for Carnival Cruises and did a lot of different things that took me down the path of kind of where I am now. So this music project, and I'm a real estate investor and do a number of different things. So this music project was something that happened completely out of the blue, being able to re-record these songs and add to production to them that I could hear was really a gift. And I said to someone yesterday, and because it's the best analogy that I can think of, it's a little bit like at the end of Christmas Day, there's a gift at the back under the tree, which everybody has missed and people have forgotten about, and it's yours and it's got your name on. And that's exactly what this was for me because I wasn't looking for it. I wasn't seeking it. I hadn't been playing actively for a number of years and it came out of the blue and it afforded me the opportunity to get back into a proper studio here in Dallas, Empire Studios, with Alex Gerst, who's the owner, who engineered the material with me. He's also a great drummer. So he put drums on some scratch tracks that we had and we turned those into songs. That was one of the 5 songs that, that I completely forgotten that Paul and I had written together, some of them which were actual singles, and I can't believe that that they weren't on the original pressing. But it's been a really cool experience getting involved, especially from the production side, going back into a studio and having a proper studio again, and being able to actually play again, and working with some really talented people that sonically brought the songs to where they are now. It's still got the same. If you like Led Zeppelin, you should. There's things that you'll love. If you like Zeppelin, Bad Company, the Black Crowes, the Stones, the Faces, Humble Pie, anything like that, you'll understand completely where we were coming from. But it's got a little bit more of a modern production. So yeah, it's been a great journey. I'm very appreciative of having the opportunity to do it.
This is such a cool interview because I like to see how you can recreate yourself, but then out of the blue be given a gift to go back to how you started. It's almost like full circle, like how you came full circle. That's beautiful. It's like a spiritual experience for you. That's cool.
Yeah.
It's also interesting when you speak about recreating yourself. As a guitarist, when you were really young, did you come from a musical family? Or were you like the odd man out that was like, I really love this?
Yeah, no, I'm from a little village in England of 2,000 people where everybody was a farmer, a plumber, a carpenter, or a bricklayer. But I was always very, very drawn to music when I was really, really young. And there was 3 or 4 of us at very young ages that were completely obsessed by it, to be frank. I mean, I was teaching when I was 16. I was touring and completely self-sufficient when I was 17. When I look back at it now, it's crazy. I moved to California when I was 18 And by the time I was, 20, 21, I was playing in the reformation of Quiet Riot at the time and, moving in different directions. I think had it been 6 or 7 years earlier and I'd have been 6 or 7 years older, because I was really young, I would have caught that style and genre a little bit differently. And I kind of knew that was happening when it was happening, because I think some of the greatest music that my favorite music, Zeppelin and early Rainbow with Ronnie James Dio, that type of thing, was happened in the late 70s. So it was right at the end of the 70s and Deep Purple when things started changing to the new wave of British heavy metal in the early 80s, Iron Maiden and, Motorhead and that type of thing. And at that time, when that was really taking off, I was only 12, 13 at the time. So I would have been really young. But no, I didn't come from a musical family. It was just something I was incredibly driven. I was a huge jazz fusion fan. That was the direction I was going in when I came out to music college. And then one of my really good friends ended up being a really good friend, Rowan Robertson, got the gig with Ronnie James Dio, and that changed everything, for me. So my whole circle completely changed. Some incredible memories, back then.
That's great. So, what are your few early memories of being a little bit starstruck? Because you do mention, being 17, 18, now you're brought over to play music, you're in the United States. I mean, it probably feels a lot different. But do you remember
Yeah.
actually like running into people, like almost like have to pinch myself? Like, is it really happening?
Yeah, I think probably the first thing was I didn't know who Quiet Riot were really, because they weren't big in England. They were, obviously they were big over here. And the one song when I was introduced to them over here, the song that they were really known for was a cover of an English band, Slade, Come On Feel the Noise. And so when I worked with Kevin, I was really quite hard on him because I wasn't impressed with any of the rock and roll stuff because I was a musician. I didn't care about any of that. I will say when I first met Ronnie Dio, he was so gracious. He was so gracious and so thoughtful. And he basically said to me, "I'll help you." And I'm like, "This is the guy who, the first single I ever bought was Black Sabbath Neon Nights with Ronnie singing. The first album I ever got was Rainbow Rising with Ronnie singing." And so that was incredible. But he was such a great human that there was no starstruck stuff back there. I never really bought into any of that, to tell you the truth. I mean, I was very lucky. I never lacked in confidence, let's put it that way. So when I went, one story that I still to this day, and if I ever see him again, I'll go and thank him. When Kiss were recording the Forever video, and Eric Carr was playing drums at the time, and it was Bruce and Gene and Paul. I was taken down to be introduced to Gene and Paul by a seamstress who was making all of our clothes, that was making their clothes and everything. And Paul was so sweet. He was such a kind, incredible man. I mean, I was this kid from nowhere, and he was so gracious. He was like, "Do you have a guitar endorsement? I'll put you together with my guy at BC Rich, etc." And he took the time. It was really cool. That was an incredible interaction that showed me the character of someone. And I have to say, honestly, the guys that were already there and had already made it, the Ronnie James Dios and Paul Stanleys of the world, they were always really cool. It was the ones that weren't quite there that weren't so cool. Let's put it that way. That were real, could be a real pain in the butt. But no, it was really cool. And all the English guys used to hang out. We used to go to the Cat and Fiddle and have a Sunday lunch and play soccer together. So we were really friendly with all the guys from Rod Stewart's band, and played soccer with the guys from Def Leppard a number of times. I think probably my most vivid memory that I did have to pinch myself a bit. The original formation of the Exiles was actually Kelly Hansen, and actually from Hurricane at the time, because I was in Hurricane for a little bit. It was Kelly and myself and James Lomenzo and Greg D'Angelo from White Lion, and we were playing together. And it was around just after that time that I was invited up to Zach Starkey's house. He's Ringo Starr's son. He's a drummer with The Who. Wonderful, sweet fella, really cool guy. Had dinner with him, and Paul knew him quite well. And we were up at Ringo's house. We'd just come back from a Joe Walsh's birthday party. And I remember sitting on the couch learning about red wine from John Entwistle of The Who at 2:00 in the morning. explaining why I was getting headaches, because he said, well, the wine's too cheap and it's the tannins. And I'm like, what the hell's a tannin? And he proceeded to educate me on, red wine. And that, when I got home, the next day, when the sun was coming up and everything, I called my parents and I'm like, I was at Ringo Starr's house last night talking to John Entwistle, and we were talking about our English teachers. That was kind of surreal. That was kind of cool.
I love that. Yeah. Even as you're talking, you're rattling off all these names that are well known names, and you're just like, yeah, I played with these guys. I think that in itself makes you really realize that every move you made early on, even in your early days, really mattered,
It
like
does.
playing with Hurricane and then playing with these guys and meeting these people, And I think also when you started to speak of moving away from music and needing to recreate your life, you really moved into a career full of like strategic moves and kind
Yeah.
of like learning risk and learning how to take risks. You had already done it. I mean, look, you stepped away from the UK, right? At a young
Yeah.
man,
Yeah.
So I find that some of the traits that we discover are already living inside of us. So
That's very true. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. That's very true. And I think change and being able to recreate yourself to be a better version of you is really important. I think one of the challenges too, and again, it's, I'm able to say that having perspective, working in other careers, outside of music, because that was my career for a number of years. It's really good to, and Paul always used to say, Paul Rafferty, the singer, he always used to say to me, sometimes Mannering, we got to shake things up. It's really good to shake things up. And so going through that change, and I think throwing yourself into situations where you're going to fail to a certain extent, that's the only time that you grow as a musician. I remember going to auditions in London with jazz guys that were like 40 and 50 years old, that to me were ancient at the time, when I was 17. And there's no way I was going to be able to hang with them and play, those complicated changes. And I knew I would fail. I knew I would fail going into it. But I also knew that if I didn't fail, I wouldn't grow. And if I didn't grow, I'd stay the same. And staying the same is not something that ever, for me, was something that I was ever going to be comfortable with. So it was always about pushing and growing, and through music, different styles of music. And then when that became apparent that wasn't necessarily going to be the only thing for me, I looked for other outlets. So it's been I've been incredibly lucky and incredibly blessed. I've lived a life of three adults, already, different careers. So I'm just very grateful, the people that I've met. And I still have great relationships with a lot of the guys who I was professional musician with. We're friends, and I stay in touch with them. Spoke to some of them the other day, and when they come to town and, they play, I'll go and see them and hang out and stuff. So it's a very broad palette, let's say, of individuals, that my circle is very broad, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. So tell me a bit about Paul Rafferty, not just as like collaborating in music, but as a person, because I know that he's also been involved with a lot of the songwriting as well.
So Paul and I wrote everything together. Incredibly talented man. I mean, the guy, he lives in the south of France. One of his homes is in the south of France. He's an artist. I mean, his paintings, sell for $30,000-$40,000 a piece. He's that talented. He was just commissioned to do a bronze statue of Winston Churchill in the UK. Incredibly talented man, and we always had a great deal of fun together. Paul and I, we were like brothers, very much so. We were very, very similar, from two different parts of England. I'm from sort of the Cambridge area, and he's from Oxford, which are two rival cities. But we spent a lot of time together writing, and there was a great chemistry with him, because he had because my, let's say, musical tastes were quite high. Let's put it that way. That's why when I was working with Kevin, I got the chance to tell him that I love him, but when I was working with him, I didn't really respect him as a singer, because he was more of a screamer, and I was really more into somebody who could really sing, Paul Rodgers, Ronnie, early Coverdale, stuff like that. And so when I met Paul, and I was like, he can really sing. He could really sing blues. and he came up with good melodies, and we would write entire songs that'd all be done in like 30 minutes from beginning to end. So it was really easy to work with. We had an awful lot of fun together too, obviously, because we have history of growing up in England, you know. Incredibly talented man. In fact, one of the joys of doing this project was the master tapes. It's really crazy how things was not really how things come together. I was sent the master tapes, and when I opened them, and I hadn't seen them in 20 years or whatever, and when I opened them, all Paul's original lyrics fell out, and all of his little drawings and doodles that he did in the studio on the artwork. So I included all of that when I designed the CD. There's a 24-page booklet with original things in there that nobody's ever seen. And it was really cool to see. It was really cool to see that stuff again. And the original songs titles that were changed. So to see all of that again and to kind of relive that was really cool. And then hearing the songs back again in a proper studio, and hearing tracks on there that weren't added to the original. Like if I put 4 guitar tracks down, only 2 would have been used in the original demo. So there's these other 2 tracks. And I'm going, oh, that's me. Oh, that's pretty good. What did I play there? So that was kind of cool. It was kind of cool hearing that and being involved in that again. I must say, I did enjoy the production side of it, being in the studio and hearing things and being able to put things down, different layers with different instruments. That I really enjoyed. So if there was an opportunity ever to go back in a studio again to work in some capacity, that I would enjoy, I think, because it's all right brain creative. And that's when the magic happens and you either receive something, you get something, you can put it down or not. But I love Paul. He's a wonderful fella. We shared some incredible times together, writing songs together, which have been captured. And so now with the album being released, that music, which I personally believe, because there's not a lot of that style of new material around now, it needs to be put out there. So I made the album for me, and if anybody likes it, that's great type of thing. I made it with the thought of how to make sure to honor everybody's contributions that played on there, with Paul's voice, with Terry, the drummer, and all of this. I mean, we had Pat Benatar's band play on there with us as well, Myron and Frank from Pat's band. We had some incredible musicians on it. And the music needs to be heard. I just wanted the music at least to have a medium so people could hear it, and then they can judge for themselves.
Yes, no, it's incredible to hear what you're saying. I wanted to ask you, when you step back into the studio now, and it's more current. A lot of the guys that I talk to, they're always editing their own things, mixing their own stuff, using Pro Tools. How was it to go back now in current day and realize how much help there is for you in like using all these devices or being able to mix things so quickly now? Because a lot of the guys have told me going back 30 or 40 years ago, things didn't go as fast.
No. And if it wasn't for the technology, this album wouldn't be able to be made, because the original 2-inch masters had degraded over time, and we had to bake them literally in an oven to be able to transfer them over to Pro Tools. So now everything is digital. There's no losses, no degeneration or anything. So I will say it does make it a lot easier in terms of efficiency, in terms of the time, and you can move things around. I think I think it's a double-edged sword, to be frank, for a lot of the younger musicians now coming up, the new musicians now coming up, because the technology is so incredible. You can rely just on the technology. You can rely just on the technology. And I was having a conversation with someone yesterday, and I said, like these guitarists now, a lot of them are, technically incredible, but I'm not feeling anything. I think every guitar player should be in some guitar playing rule book somewhere that at least one solo you can only play 3 notes and see what you can do with those 3 notes. Because I really miss that. When you hear David Gilmour play a note, it's him. When you hear Paul Kossoff or Jimmy Page, it's them, or Eric Clapton or Jeff Beck, it's them immediately. And now to me, it's so homogenized. It's very, very, and so much has been done because of the technology. So I think it's a double-edged sword. I think it was probably, if it's used correctly, I'm old school. I was old school when I was a kid. When I was a kid, I was old school. So I'm really old school now.
Well, I appreciate it. I know there's a very big, conversation happening about AI and the
Yeah.
taboos of AI. And it's fascinating to me because people are putting out music that aren't even musicians. And that's the piece
Yeah.
that gets me really crazy because you spend your whole life studying music and then somebody whips up a song, and they're
Yeah.
not a musician.
No, and it's not the same. I mean, I experienced something like that a number of years back to a different level. I was actually in an airport. I was traveling, and I had a guy, and I don't know who I was playing with at the time, but I was in an airport on the road, on touring, and a guy came up and he said, "Hey man, do you play?" And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." He goes, "Yeah, me too." And I said, "Oh, what do you play?" He goes, "I scratch." I said, "What?" He said, "I scratch. I'm a DJ. I scratch." And I'm thinking, you don't play. You're a DJ. Anyway, so yeah. Now with I believe I believe to call yourself a musician, you have to actually be able to play an instrument. I mean, call me old school or stupid or something, but it's like I believe if you're a pilot, you should be able to actually fly a plane. So yeah, what are you going to do?
I agree. Wow, that's amazing. I want to move on to talk about the first single is Rainmaker. Tell the audience
Mm.
about that song.
So Greg D'Angelo from White Lion played drums on that. Greg was in the original formation of the band, and that was recorded in his garage originally on an 8-track Tascam cassette. Wasn't a quarter-inch tape, wasn't a 2-inch tape. It was actually on a cassette. So we did quite a bit of work. He did a phenomenal job, incredible job. Greg was our original drummer, and he's a big Bonham fan. He loves Zeppelin, and it's just naturally, I don't know what it is, whether it's the rain, whether we're all raised in the countryside over there, but it's got a kind of, English sort of players have a feel about them. And that song, the music of that song was actually written before I met Paul. So Rowan and I, we were rooming together at the time, Rowan Robertson, we were really into the Sonic Temple album, the Colts' new album at the time that Bob Brock had produced, and they were stepping more into a heavier, production with heavy Les Pauls under 12 strings and stuff. It was really cool. And so we were listening to that a lot. And the Rainmaker riff came out of one night just listening to Sonic Temple on headphones, listening to that album over and over and over. And then the riff, came out on a 12 string. And I borrowed Rowan's Les Paul to record the really heavy guitar underneath it. And it just happened. And then, when we were looking for singers before I found Paul, we had a couple of other singers that we were looking at, and they were, great guys. They weren't quite right. And actually, bless his heart, Glenn Hughes came down and listened to the track. It was great to meet him because the story behind wanting to get an English blues singer actually came from a charity gig that Greg, James, Kelly, and myself did in Hollywood. So Kelly was doing it was with another band, and Greg, James, and myself and Ray Gillen from Badlands were doing some Deep Purple numbers for this charity gig. And it was after that, after playing with Ray and experience, and I'm like, yeah, that's what I need. I kind of need that type of thing. And he was the one that said, get a blues singer to me. And so that's how it all came about. So the music was written before I met Paul, and then he heard it, and then he put the melody and the lyrics, down on that really, really quickly. And I knew then that there was something before we'd actually really written together. I knew then that we would be able to produce some good music together, because there was a chemistry there. And we had so much fun. I mean, it's like anything in life. If you can't laugh about it and you can't have fun, what's the bloody point? So we would have a lot of fun, when we were writing stuff like that. But that came about. That was the first song actually that Paul and I wrote together. But it was done. The music was already written, and he put the lyrics and the melodies and the vocal on it. All of the other songs were actually written together, kind of at the same time. So I'd come up with a riff, and then he'd come up with a melody, or he'd come up with a melody, and I'd come up with some words, or he'd come up with some words, and I'd come up with a melody. So all the other songs were actually written together as completely every song on the album is Paul and I just together as one creating this new thing. Yeah, which was really cool. And I didn't experience that kind of. I'd written with some and worked with some great artists. I mean, it was great to work with Kevin DuBrow when I was working with him when he wanted to reform Quiet Riot. It was a different thing. It was great working with Kelly. But the thing with Paul, because of the English thing, it was just there, you know. So
this is great. So we're gonna play Rainmaker now.
Give me
just so the audience knows, this album is called Turning Time. And how many songs are being released on that?
There's 15 songs on the entire album. I think I'm probably going to release a minimum of 5 or 6 because there's such a different palette. Like some of the early Zeppelin stuff, you have really heavy stuff and you have acoustic stuff. Richmond Castle Walk starts with an acoustic and a mandolin, okay, and then gets really heavy like Sabbath, and that's totally different to Friend, which is like an early Rod Stewart and the Faces up tempo type of song. So there's so many different styles in there. I don't know. I'm just going to keep releasing it until it's all done. I think, we'll see what happens.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. Before we talk about your next song, tell us how we can follow you. Facebook, Instagram. What is the handles on that?
The Exiles UK on Facebook and on Instagram. And I was trying on TikTok, but they actually flagged Rainmaker with copyright and you can't hear it, and it's my bloody song. So I'm going backwards and forwards with them on it, trying to explain to them I'm actually the author type of thing. But yeah, mainly Facebook, also on X as well as the Exiles UK. And if you search the Exiles, Sean Manning, Paul Rafferty, or the Exiles UK, you'll find it. And we've had quite a few people, that are being introduced to it now that like that style of music, are saying some nice things about it, a lot of nice things about it. So that's been good.
Yes, I have to thank Michael Brambolt for introducing me to you. So we're going to move into talking about the last song that was recently released, and that's Soul Woman.
Yeah. So that is one of the forgotten lost songs that I had completely forgotten about. And when I received the master tapes, I saw the title on there, and the title I remembered, but when we played it, I couldn't remember the song at all. It was out of nowhere, and it sounded, the beginning reminded me of Black Dog, Led Zeppelin, and it was really good and it was really catchy. And I'm like, why didn't this go on the? It wouldn't have made any difference. Nobody would have heard it originally, but it was one of the 5 where I was like, this is I like the song. So being a musician, I never used to listen to any of my work, any of the stuff that I did professionally. It's not like I'd really listen to it after you've recorded it and done it, type of thing. But having to, with this particular album, having to listen to everything because I'm adding instrumentation, I'm adding production to it. I had to listen to it. It's going to sound like really cheesy, but I'm actually a fan of this album myself. I can listen to it, which is, I could never do that before. And so when we pulled it up and played it in the studio, I mean, it was massive, huge. And so, I heard some other, there was already a heavy Les Paul on there, but I heard the doubling of 2 or 3 tracks. And then I added vocals to it. I added vocals to the whole album, backing vocals to the entire album. Because the original tracks they weren't very produced. They weren't really finished. They were very raw. And like I said, listening to it now, I'm hearing, well, we need to double this. I need to add some backing vocals here. I need to add a Les Paul here against the Telecaster to bring the riff out, to make it stand out more. And then bringing in Jeff's keyboards. And I got to say, working with Jeff Jacobs was incredible. So if anybody's listening to this and they ever need a keyboard player, Jeff played with Billy Joel and with Foreigner. Being a musician, being a guitarist, and not a piano player, we think differently, and we speak in different languages, because piano players usually they'll write everything down, and guitar players a lot of them, and I don't. I used to be able to read, but it's been years. So I would say to him, when I'm hearing the track, and on Soul Woman too, and I say, remember that early Rod Stewart stuff when it was kind of da na na whatever. Can you do something like that? And he would just nail it straight away. So working with somebody who has an ear as advanced as Jeff's was really helpful, because he was able to get the ideas that I had up here. He was able to get them out and down and add them to the tracks, which again, I'm hearing the stuff back that I'm hearing in here, and it's actually on the final track. So working with him was an absolute joy. And Soul Woman is a very up-tempo, very heavy song. But it starts off like Black Dog. It's just a guitar riff and the vocal, then the whole band comes in. And it's very big. I mean, when you hear it, you'll hear it's very, It's a very heavy, very big, and just finished a video for it. And the video actually goes back because I used AI for the video. I'm not going to hire a camera and go out there and do it now. I won't use any AI at all with the music, but it's a wonderful tool for the video stuff. So I took a bunch of old pictures that we had that nobody had seen, and put them in a scrapbook, and also included all of the landmarks that we played at in LA, like the Troubadour and the Whiskey and all of those places where we gigged, and Beverly Hills where where Paul and I lived and stuff. So that I wanted to bring some of that history back into the video. So there's a lot of personal things in the video of the studio, inside the studio and that type of thing, to where that's got a nice little bow on it now. Now the next one I've got to work on is I'm the One, which is another lost track. I've got an idea for the video with that includes a vintage Shelby Mustang. Then I don't know what I'm going to do after that. I've got to go to Europe and Switzerland to do some stuff, and I'll get back to it when I get back.
Wow. Well, it is very exciting. I look forward to checking out Turning Time and the songs as you're releasing them. I can't thank you enough for spending time with me today, and I want everyone to go and check out the Exiles. Thank you again, Sean Manning.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you.
Say you're gonna be leaving, say it's on your mind. Exotic faraway places, lose yourself, pay me no mind. Traveling with your sisters, dressed in all you own, head to toe in white dress linen. Woman, how you've grown. So woman, listen to what
You have been listening to Bringing the Darkness to the Light with Catherine Nadal, professional psychic medium, Dream Central Station, LLC. My audio editor is Al Hemberger at the Loft Recording Studios in Bronxville, New York. This is WNEW 102.7 FM radio.